Bill Pickett. How are you, brother?
Fabian, I'm good. How are you, brother?
Doing really good. Excited to chat with you.
Same here. Same here. It's good to see you again.
Yeah. Yeah, you too. So, in this podcast, we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly about starting and running a law firm in the age of
Right on.
AI. And I know you know a few things about that. Um,
Yeah.
and First, for the folks that haven't met you yet, if you can give us just a little bit of a background, and I always like to ask people just to give your summary of what how you got into law.
Yeah. So, Bill Pickett, born and raised, homegrown in the Yakima Valley. Um, Never really thought I'd be a lawyer. Never really gave a lot of thought to being a lawyer. Growing up here in Yakima, I was, boy, sort of dyed in the wool jock who loved everything about sports and competition and always planned that I would be a guy who got out of high school and went on to college, played some college athletics, ended up detouring right after high school, ended up in Alaska. It was going to be a summer gig, try to go to Alaska and make a little bit of money. And that turned into I call it a gap decade, not a gap year. It was a 10-year process. Started working in the trades in Alaska in logging and commercial fishing. Last 4 years I was there. I had trained and become a certified as a commercial deep sea diver. Did that for about 4 years and woke up one day and reminded myself that I was supposed to go to college at the end of summer. It was just a 10-year gap. And so finally got back, got married, got grounded, got back into school, and that led me to the law.
Nice.
Yeah.
And where'd you go to college?
I had when well, I don't think there was a college in the country that would have taken me at that point in time. I had to um, start at community college, which
Yeah.
I have a huge heart for anybody who's come through and sort of worked the ranks up through the community college system here in Yakima, and then over in North Seattle. And then at that point in time, once you got your associate's degree, the UW was kind enough to let you transfer in as a full-fledged junior to the University of Washington, and ended up that's where I received my bachelor's degree in society and justice, and really spent. I knew when I went back to school, I was really wanting to study law. Um, Although I can tell you when I decided to leave Alaska and go back to school, I had no idea that you actually had to go to college first. I thought you could go to law school, and it had a rude awakening that you actually had to get a college degree. But ended up at the UW, finished there, and then on to a whole slew of denials from law schools who still didn't think I was fit to get in the door. And then I got a couple that let me in, and I worked my way up through law school. Um, Started in California, finished at Lewis and Clark down in Portland with my JD, and then was blessed to get into an LLM program at Temple back in Philadelphia, and I did an LLM in trial advocacy, which is a fantastic program. Shout out to the Temple Owls and anybody that's interested in getting an LLM in trial ad. Temple's the place to be. Really good Philly lawyers and good people from around the country that go there. And then obviously the other thing that really shaped me in terms of trial practice, and you know this yourself because you yourself have been there, and that's out at Jerry's Ranch in Wyoming and the Trial Lawyers College.
Yep.
Another huge blessing for a guy who used to stand on the back deck of a fishing boat or crawl around on the bottom of the sea to make a living. To have the ability to kind of get to school and go to places like the Spence Ranch to learn how to try cases for real people who have some real difficult times in front of them. So
Yeah.
there's the nutshell.
Yeah. That's awesome, Bill. And then where after the LLM, did you start on your own right off the bat, or did you work for a firm?
Started with a little small firm here in Yakima. There were 8 lawyers, and I mostly did insurance defense work right out of the chute. Did that for 4.5 years. Got a partnership, and then short-lived partnership. I knew pretty quickly that wasn't the world I wanted to live in.
Mm.
And when I say the world I wanted to live in, I knew I was not going to do insurance, civil defense work. It's not who I am. I was always found myself in sort of an awkward position defending claims. I'd much rather prosecute the civil claims than defend them. And I have a lot of respect for people that are able to do that on both sides of the fence. I can do it, but it's not my favorite choice. So I left the insurance defense world after about 4.5 years, left the partnership, and I decided I am going to be a solo practitioner. And one of the things I recall, this was back in I think 2002. I was going to use all the technology that was available, and believe me, compared to today, there wasn't much to help me be a solo practitioner where I wouldn't have to rely on a whole lot of other people to get the work done. And so I left the firm and I started in my garage. That's where my first office was for about 3 years. It was 115 in the summer and free below zero in the winter. That was the founding of the Pickett Law Firm. Yes,
Nice. Nice, and we met, when you had your still solo practice, yeah, way back in the day,
it's been a
I don't know,
while.
yeah, I don't know if you remember, but, yeah, I always, asked you all my dumb questions, and I definitely considered you a mentor, man. I
Yeah,
was
no dumb questions, no dumb questions. All I remember is just a wild-eyed young guy who was like, "I'm ready to take on Goliath. Send him my way." And that's what I remember about Favian. And I was actually thrilled to see a young lawyer who was ready to jump in the middle and fearless. That's the other thing. And I think you had that even before you went to the ranch. I'm a slow learner for sure, and I needed a little ranch prompting to get some fearlessness in me. But I think you had that fearlessness down, Fabian, before you ever went out to the
uh,
ranch, and it only helped you. So kudos to you.
oh, thank you, brother. Um, and then so how long were you in your own law firm, your own solo? Because I know you're with
Oh,
with
yeah,
the
just shy of
partner
20
now at a
seasons.
nice, nice,
Yeah,
heck yeah. And then you
yeah,
teamed up with your current law firm now, right?
right.
Yeah.
In the 20th season, uh, I said, it would be nice. And it's just, this is again, this is proof that I'm a slow learner. Um, you need a team of people around you. You certainly need
Mhm,
to leverage technology when you can leverage technology. I'm a big fan of technology, um, in a support role for lawyers. But then you also need human beings to come alongside and collaborate with. So while I believe and love and support solo practitioners, I'm a huge fan now of trying to come together in a collaborative fashion with other human beings, um, to to the sum total of those bodies and those minds making something that's far greater than you can ever do on your own. That's the key.
mhm,
Can you do something collaboratively with another person? And it's hard for solos because there's a reason why people like me are solo attorneys for 20 years and beyond, right? Sometimes we don't collaborate well with others. But that's a learned skill, and it's taken me, like I said, quite a while to figure it out. But so for the last almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years in June. I've teamed up, created a new firm with Paul Larson and Ryan Griffey. That's
mhm,
LGP Law Firm here in town. Those folks do the transactional side of the house. I do litigation, but again, almost 95% of it's limited to injury, catastrophic loss claims, police misconduct, medical malpractice, the stuff that really pulls at my heart, and the people that I really, really want to help.
mm, that's awesome. And then as far as your support staff, how many support staff do you currently have?
Boy, we've got, if I count heads, we probably got at least we got 7 or 8 support staffers here. Yeah,
Nice.
which
For the whole
wonderful
firm
people. I
or
mean, the
just
backbone, yeah. I mean, the backbone, right? The backbone of what we do. Like, as lawyers, we play a role, but the support staff is so critical to the lifeblood of a firm, especially when you're working these cases like, that are they're liability cases, they're hotly contested and well financed, and
Mm,
resourced on the opposite side. It's not often where you get into a profession where you wake up and every day you come to work and you have people on the opposite side of what you're doing who are earning a living, thinking, eating, sleeping, and trying to figure out ways to stop you from succeeding in what you're called to do. There's not a lot of professions
mhm,
like that.
mhm.
And
Yep.
so, uh, which makes our job incredibly challenging and humbling when we're able to accomplish it in spite of those odds. And the key, I guess, the point I'm trying to make and circle back to here is this: support staff is so critical because they're the lifeblood of your firm. Because you cannot be everywhere and every situation all of the time, and it takes a whole family of people on mission and on point to bring some justice in some of these cases that are, as you know, incredibly difficult, incredibly challenging, and we're all addicted to it because the thrill of actually accomplishing something for another human being who's suffered a loss, it's cathartic not only for that for the person who suffered it, but also I think for the lawyers who are committed to doing the work. There is
Mm,
something healing to us as well in that
mm,
process.
mhm.
Yeah.
How do you think about, even obviously within your law firm, within your team, but also collaborating outside of your law firm with other attorneys or other even, contract paralegals or contract
Hmm.
staff? How do
Yeah.
you think through that? And, has that changed from when you were solo to now that you're in a team?
Yeah, so I always would do, when I fished in the North Pacific, we would do these things with other boats, and they were joint ventures, right? We'd always call them joint ventures. And basically a joint venture is, let's say it's a crab season, and you're gonna take your boat and you're going to the Bering Sea, and you're gonna go hunt for crab against sometimes incredible difficulty, whether it be storms, the ocean, the environment, all of it. And sometimes to spread the risk, it's an incredibly risky venture. And anybody who's worked the back deck of a boat knows, you know how you work that? You work it on a cruise share. A cruise share is nothing more than a contingent fee arrangement for
Oh,
fishermen. Okay.
dang.
So obviously, if you hit the goal and you land, whether it be crab, halibut, salmon, the fish that you're looking for, the product you're looking for, you can make a lot of money because you get a percentage of what you catch. Sound a lot like a
Yep.
contingent fee arrangement, right?
Yep.
So joint ventures are a way to spread the risk among boats. So instead of one boat and one crew taking on all the risk of all the expense and all the work, you team with another boat to share that risk. So when I moved from the back deck and through my trade working in the trades, that thinking was already in my mind that I would always look for collaboration when the target was right and fitting. I would look for these collaborations, but I didn't really call them collaborations. I called them joint ventures. So I would
Mm,
joint venture with another law firm or lawyer. Typically, as a solo, it'd be lawyer to lawyer, and we would just figure out, okay, how do we come together and both of us bring a set of skills together that will enhance the case on behalf of the client. And I can't even count the number of joint ventures that I was able to do as a solo with other law firms, arranging, discussing, strategy and how a case would be processed and handled all the way through um, discovery, intake, discovery, and trial, how our fees shared, all of the things that had to be handled in conjunction with meeting the needs of the client. So I did a number of those, and I thought all of them really fruitful. The one thing I would always say about these joint ventures, though, and don't ever forget this, you're supposed to, the ethics rule require us if we do collaborations or joint ventures, you've got to get all this in writing, obviously get client approval of all of this, and you've got to do
yeah,
the work. You get paid in proportion to the work that's done, right? So it can be a
yeah.
disproportionate fee sharing. The thing to remember about that is the work's never going to be proportionate.
Mm,
So that's just the nature of what we do. Somebody's always going to be pulling the oar harder. And that doesn't really matter if you're in the boat together with another lawyer or law firm that shares the desire and the goal of accomplishing something great for a client that hopefully brings healing and restoration back to their life after a catastrophic event. If you're able to do that, the disproportionality in reality of who does what and who handles the work and all that, it sort of falls by the wayside. So it's just the matter of doing joint ventures requires careful picking of who it is you're going to joint venture with. You definitely don't want to go to sea with a partner boat that's got a leaky hull, or people who don't want to pull the oar.
yeah.
Same thing in a joint venture in law. You don't want to team up with another lawyer or another firm that isn't capable of being 110% in on all that there is to do. There,
Mm.
there's my thoughts on Pickett joint ventures.
Heck yeah. That should be that sounds like a good book title for
There you go.
for
Yeah.
uh, I completely agree. I've a couple years ago I teamed up with my sister who's an attorney, and did my
Okay.
first trial as a team as with another attorney, and it was night and day. Before that I had always done all of my trials solo and took a lot of pride in just being in there, but
Yeah.
it was just like so much more fun, and I was so much more effective. I mean, it's
Yeah.
I yeah I do everything I can now to make sure I'm not in there alone because it can get
We're,
it can get tough.
but by our very nature, and this is a generalization about lawyers, and I make a lot of generalizations about lawyers, so bear with
Yeah.
me. We're a pretty controlling group of people.
Oh,
And so that makes joint ventures really challenging. That's why finding that person or people or firm that you're compatible with, and that you see where the end zone is. And you may have strategic differences in terms of how you get in the end zone, but you understand where the end zone is and where you're ultimately trying to get. That's critical. And you do that at the inception of any relationship to joint venture on something, your odds of success are really increased. Because think about the numbers. I've got cases, where we'll have, maybe if we've got 4 or 5 defendants, well, 4 or 5 defendants, it means 4 or 5 well financed insurance defense firms with multitudes of people all coming at you. And if you have just one brain, you want to try to multiply that brain to the ability to I guess to the level that you can within reason, so that you're trying to balance and equal the playing field. Because you take, 4 or 5 law firms, and they've each got 3 or 4, maybe they got 2 lawyers minimum, 2 or 3 lawyers on the case. Well, three lawyers times four, do the math. You're outnumbered brain cells, right? So you got to
mm,
try to balance that out a little bit. The other beautiful thing about this world that we now live in is I think AI is a great equalizer.
mm,
Okay.
yeah,
And if used properly as a resource, AI can. I'm just like the rest of us getting into AI and figuring out how this works and what AI tools are out there that we can leverage, not to replace the human brain and thinking and analysis, but to enhance it and to
mm,
enhance it. And that to me is pretty exciting stuff. If I were a brand new lawyer, which I'd love to be a brand new lawyer, and AI was coming on the scene, I would spend a lot of time learning those tools, because those tools can be game changers, especially when you're out resourced. You're
mm,
out resourced by these big firms that, make no mistake, well financed, very well financed by deep, deep pockets of insurance companies and risk pools. Um, and, as we know, quite frankly, they fight and they fight hard. They fight hard.
yeah,
And part of the reason they get to fight hard is they have resources that sometimes they outgun us. So as a plaintiff's jock, you got to be really creative. And I don't know any plaintiffs lawyers yet that I've met that are looking at AI and saying, "Oh man, this is the devil incarnate." They're saying, "You know what? This is." They're probably not where I am, where I think it's a great equalizer, but they're certainly going, "You know what? This has some sea legs, and this is something we probably better keep looking at because we want to balance the scales of justice a little bit, so that we're not outgunned every time we turn around by a well-financed defense firm who has very, very lucrative resources to bring to bear on the case." So.
Oh, actually, that's a good segue. What are your current favorite AI tools right now?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan. So Westlaw invested in CoCounsel, right?
Yep.
And that's their AI version. And I was at a seminar. I'll tell you a great sort of, this is a little bit of a segue, but every time you ask me a question, there'll be a story behind it. So bear with me.
Oh,
Um, so I connected with through some state bar service years ago with a conference called the Western States Bar Conference. And the Western States Bar Conference is held annually in various locations around the U.S. A lot of times it'll be in Hawaii. So big point. If it's a conference that's in Hawaii, I'm a fan, right? And the Western States Bar Conference is unique in that it takes Western states, and this I'm talking Alaska, Washington, Hawaii, Arizona, Utah, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, New Mexico. Yeah, I think I said Utah. These are Western states. These are mandatory bar associations. The leadership comes together once a year, and they have these conferences, and you learn. And because I'm admitted in 4 different states, right? I'm an Alaska, Washington, Oregon, Arizona lawyer. So you've got to, as you know, we got to do our mandatory CLE credits. So I get a lot of those credits at this Western States Bar Conference, and it allows me to get up to speed on not just one state, what's happening with the bar associations in one state. I can get the 4 states that I'm a member of, plus I can learn what's happening in Montana. What are lawyers doing there? You want to talk about a supercharged assembly of minds, and it's all bar leadership. So people who are very much interested in how does a state bar function and provide services to the people that we are supposed to service, right? So I love these conferences. Well, I was at one. The meeting was down in Arizona, and they started talking AI, and they brought in and I apologize, I don't remember the exact name, the person's name, but it was a lead counsel, in-house counsel for Ford Motor Company,
hmm,
and they beta tested co-counsel for Westlaw, and they start showing what it'll do, how it assists in drafting and research, and eliminating what all of us are afraid of, and that is the hallucinations, right?
yeah.
Where
Yep.
AI you're doing some research and you've seen the stuff on the lawyers, they're getting nailed because they cite a case. And guess what, counsel? It doesn't exist because AI hallucinated the case and the site. And so what Westlaw has done with co-counsel is they've eliminated that, or they've minimized that issue because they link the LLM, the large language model that they pull from, they've linked it to their database of cases and
Mm,
statutes, right? So when it tells you this is a case and you've asked an AI type of question, um, it will give you real law, not some made up law. So one, I was really intrigued by that, but because before that I was like, I'm a little skeptical. I don't want to get, I don't want to be the first guy in Washington State to get uh, put up on the billboard and on the new from the news, the nightly news, because I cited a case in some jurisdiction that doesn't exist and some principle that doesn't exist and parties that don't exist and all this stuff. So I watched the presentation at the Western States Bar Conference, and I immediately after the speaker finished, I went up to the conference organizer, which is the executive director for the Arizona State Bar, Joel England, who's become a good friend. He's become a friend of mine, a great guy, fantastic lawyer, great organization. Shout out for Arizona. Um, and I said, "Hey, Joel, I'm just going to tell you now that you've put that presentation on. I am thoroughly convinced I'm malpracticing every client that I have in my office because I'm not in any way, shape, or form up to speed on what
mm,
is going on in AI. And we know, at least here in Washington, and I haven't checked my other jurisdictions, we have an ethical duty to stay current, not just in the law, but in the tools, including AI and electronic means of communication. We have to stay current to be competent to practice law. That is actually one of our ethical responsibilities. So, and I told him, I said, wow, you talk about making me feel completely insecure. And he looks at me, he goes, everybody in this room feels insecure right now.
Mm.
And the reality was it was true, because what Ford Motor Company, with a ton of resources, was able to do during their beta testing is figure out how to get this thing moving in a generative AI fashion that truly was helpful to lawyers. So that's typically right now, that's the main source, right? Is co-counsel, very spendy program, and I don't even know the exact. It's a lot to keep it, but I think it's worth it. And the other thing, and I'll just throw a shout out. And as I know you do more, you are of that uh, era of person that probably knows more AI tools than I've ever even heard of, and I know there's a whole host of them. Um, but I'm a fan of just the regular Chat GPT. You get on and you go for questions, for queries, things that I'm not worried about confidentiality, but I want to know some generic lay of the land. I'll get on there and I'll start with generic questions, and then I'll flip over to our Westlaw and our co-counsel AI service, and I'll utilize that. The other thing I want to give a shout out to, though, and I think this is important, because when I was and during my time of service to the State Bar Association here in Washington, we entered into some really good agreements with Fast Case. uh,
Yep.
and Fast Case was sort of a really kind of cutting edge legal research, and we were able to provide to members, 40,000 plus members in the state of Washington, access to Fast Case. We called it free legal research. It wasn't free. We people pay their bar dues, and as a benefit of the bar dues, they got Fast Case research. Well, Phil Rosenthal, who's one of the founders of Fast Case, has since merged with VLEX, which is
Mm.
a leading research company. And now they've just recently merged yet again, been bought up by Clio.
Hmm.
And I know that Fastcase, at the time it was merged with VLEX, they were creating an AI tool called Vincent,
Mm.
which is another, and it's a different format, but another excellent tool. And I would point anybody to, if you've got access to these things, or you don't have get access. But what Phil and his team were able to do is put together a legal research database. Was probably the largest in the world with the merger with VLEX. I'm sure it's probably, I haven't been on in a while because since their merger with Clio, which is case management software, as you know. But Vincent was a tool they were developing, which was a whole nother AI tool to assist lawyers in doing the work that we have to do, and to do it more efficiently. And I think in some ways even deeper. So um, there you go. There's a couple of thoughts there.
Yeah. Does your firm use, I know there's a few, I think Clio and Filevine and a few other like, legal office management software incorporate like, something like, in-house AI where it'll
Yeah.
only answer based on what's in your files, kind of
Yeah.
like, like
Yeah.
to come up with like, medical chronologies and stuff like that. Have you tried any of those?
Yeah, so our case management software is Smokeball.
Oh,
Okay.
I this is the second time I've heard of it, actually. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and Smokeball has an AI component. We are not using. I should be
Oh,
quiet about this. We're using Smokeball for basic file management, right? Case
okay.
management software. They do have an AI component, but I have become so sold on co-counsel that
Mm,
we do not include that in our package. We could if we wanted to, but once I learn, once I learn something, I kind of stick with it. So that availability is there with Smokeball, and Smokeball does a lot of good. It's a lot of good case management, file management, things that I used to do when I started out, and I was quote unquote leveraging technology. It was pulling up a Microsoft Word document and then creating a file and just putting everything in little files, like, which was the upgraded version of the trial lawyer's notebook or
mm,
notebook system, right? I mean, that's the way it was all done. And I just sort of moved that into doing it all online. And now, of course, it's been transitioned into case management software that sort of builds those files, if you will, for you and allows you to pull data together. I do like the idea and probably should explore it with Smokeball of having that built-in AI tool that literally takes your in-house files and does the searches and builds the what do you call it? I mean, it's not even searching. It helps you theorize and brainstorm a case. That's a great tool for the Chat GPT, excuse me, does this really well where you're just brainstorming. You're brainstorming and you're thinking about a theory and it'll give you its feedback and it may be off the wall wrong. You have to ferret it all out and determine whether it's actually applicable to existing law. But for brainstorming, I think that's probably one of the most powerful things you can get out of AI is running queries just to say, what if? What if? And if you don't have a person to what if to, well, now guess what? There's a whole bunch of what if people out there are what if entities,
Mm.
AI entities that will what if with you. They'll
Mhm.
theorize with you, right? They'll do hypos with you. That's powerful stuff because in my mind, it stimulates our brain. We're not to be lazy and try to use this is the fix of all. I get to sip margaritas or mai tais in Hawaii and have an avatar running my practice. That's not where it's going, at least
Yeah.
not for me. But it absolutely should be a tool that helps me stimulate the ideas and the creativity that is really so wonderfully woven into what we do as plaintiffs lawyers, right?
Mm.
The creativity and the ability to sort of be your own director, producer, screenwriter, actor, the whole thing all wrapped into one as we put on these trials to try to find justice for our clients. That's the enhancement of that is at everybody's fingertips now, right? This thing called AI and the tools. You got to explore the tools. That's the other thing I would say to people. Please, please, please don't be like me. Don't lock into one tool and then be afraid to use others. Experiment with the tools because I was literally blown away. I'll circle back to the Western States Bar Conference and give kudos to them at the number of AI assisted tools there are available just for lawyers.
Mm.
Just for us. They're created for us. Obviously, we must have some addiction to technology, right? Because there's
Mm.
so many different tools available for lawyers, whether it be deposition summarization, right?
Yeah.
Comparison. You get to take a dep, take another dep. Instead of using your brain power 100% in, I've got to compare what was said, compare and contrast any inconsistencies. I can now get AI to do that and free me up to do more work. That is uh, that is probably this. We live in such an exciting unparalleled excitement is what we should have right now as attorneys, given what we're seeing come at us, provided we don't ever forget about real human beings and human relationships. We don't replace those with AI. We use those as supplementing and bringing more into our life, not replacing. That makes sense.
Oh, yeah, totally, totally.
It's probably just an old guy talking.
Oh, no, you have a very refreshing, perspective. I completely I never heard of AI being something that we're ethically, um, required to stay on top of, and I that's
Yeah.
completely on point. That's, and
I take it to the extreme, right? The
yeah,
rule really focuses on technology and our requirement to stay on top of
yeah,
technology. Well, if you look at tech today, it's all about the AI. So
yeah,
the other thing I utilize it for in my practice, but also outside of the practice is I've been and you know this I talked a little bit about it before doing building bridges Cambodia USA. It's a project where I've been
yeah,
reaching out to Cambodian judges and lawyers for a lot of years now. And it's so flippin' exciting. I get a document from Cambodia. It's all in Khmer. I'm not fluent in Khmer. I don't even speak broken Khmer. I have little tiny bits of it that I can speak, but very little. But I can take an AI document, or excuse me, I can take a document from the Bar Association of the Kingdom of Cambodia. I can take that, plop it into AI, and it'll translate what it means to me like that.
Yep.
And that's super exciting because when you are building bridges internationally with lawyers and judges who speak a different language, and also practice law in a different type of law. They're a civil law country as opposed to being a common law country. So there's a
Mm.
lot of obstacles, and AI has only helped in building those bridges that are based on relationship for sure. But it's brought so much enhancement because I can get a document from a fellow lawyer or judge in Cambodia, and it may be in Khmer, man. I can make the translation and we can communicate in a phenomenal way. So that's exciting. And that project is an ongoing project. In fact, one of my friends on the bench, he's there right now. I was supposed to be in Cambodia actually right now, but my back has been giving me a ton of problems. So as I work through that, I'm in the process of actually communicating almost daily with the Kingdom of Cambodia Bar Association, the Ministry of Justice, and my good friend who's over there, Judge Kuhnauer, who's in my absence, he's building bridges in a phenomenal way between our legal community and that legal community, which are we're only separated by about 7,500 miles, right?
Oh,
Um,
down the street.
but with technology and the advent of AI and the ability, it has only enhanced communication. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of hope. Obviously, I know it seems like every techie thing that comes up in the world also gets used for some mal purpose or some less than good reason. But the rest that's going to happen. That's the world that we live in. But as lawyers, I think our goal should always be when the tech comes out or the advancements in technology come out, we should be looking first and foremost for ways that we can leverage that technology in a healthy, a productive way that enhances our ability to assist clients in accessing the justice system. And that's what I see sort of as the huge blessing that comes with this whole AI world that we're now living in.
Hmm.
So,
Well, one last thought that came up while you were talking is I was talking to an attorney friend of mine over the weekend, and he was having a conversation with ChatGPT. He just pulled up, ChatGPT and started
mhm,
asking it about um, this medical terminology and medical procedures,
yep,
and basically was getting educated on medical, getting but the thing that he discovered kind of step further was he was able to get the ChatGPT to give him a list of expert providers in that field, more than the
yep,
ones we would normally reach out to. Like we would normally reach out to an expert that's kind of like kind of does an expert for a living, but this
yep,
gives you he was able to find experts that he would have never thought of because I guess it was a very niche thing, and reached
yep,
out to the experts and made that connection. And it was a session that took him an hour or two in his office, and whereas something that being educated on
right,
something like that and getting connected in the field,
yes.
yeah, it's
Absolutely 100% spot on, right on point. You can take AI right now and research experts, and even more than just researching experts and potential experts, you can actually get yourself educated in a short period of time to have a reasonable conversation with somebody who's well versed, not to be the expert yourself, but for instance, if I used to, here's the old school. If I took on a case of, I can recall a case of pseudotumor cerebri, right? I didn't even know how to say it. Pseudotumor cerebri. What is it? Well, I had spent hours researching increased intracranial pressure and how that can cause a stroke in the optic nerve, which can then lead to blindness or permanency. Horrible stuff. And you have different fundoscopic eye exams where you can look for this thing called papilledema, and if there's a rating of a certain number in papilledema, that's evidence of increased intracranial pressure, which then leads to pseudotumor cerebri. And doctors who are all well versed and trained in this are supposed to be able to spot this condition and rectify it quickly, right? Well,
Mm,
what once would have taken me, oh gosh, hours and hours and hours.
mm,
And then I would have talked to the expert. I would have got about 50% of it wrong. And
yep,
then they would educate me, and I would have to pay for them to educate me. Well, now I've been able to condense that down at least a little bit to get myself up to speed on a rudimentary level for the most part, but sometimes a little more advanced. And so when I reach out to the expert, I can be approaching and speaking and trying to build relationship with them on a little bit closer to where they're at. Okay.
yep,
And that's a direct result of, if I don't I've never done a blepharoplasty or a muleirectomy, or I've never done any of the procedure like that, or a surgical technique or anything. I can get on an AI and generative AI especially, and I can learn the basics. I don't trust that it's 100% correct.
yeah,
We need to have a healthy level of skepticism. That's why we're lawyers,
mhm,
and then roll forward and confirm all these things with an expert that would have helped you find, that would then help you at downstream, somewhere downstream, help your client. The thing to remember, and this is kind of going off the subject of AI, and it's really talking about the topic of expert witnesses, which is another whole book in and of itself. But
yeah,
when you work with expert witnesses, and I've worked with so many over the years, absolutely critical that first and foremost, before you start um, discussing or having discussions about a particular case, you need to take time to build some relationship with that expert that connects with them on a human level.
mm,
And that isn't really talking about the expertise that they may have that you ultimately need to have for your case. It may just be talking to them about being a human being. I remember retaining, I think it was a neurosurgeon on a case. This was a long time ago. We spent, and you got to pay experts to talk to them. They're not free, but we probably spent the first half an hour of a conference together, and all we talked about was the expert's love of duck hunting,
mm,
and that was it. And why did we talk about duck hunting? It had nothing to do with the case, but it had everything to do with me building a relationship with that other human who I really liked and wanted to become. I wanted them to become an advocate for my client to help us proceed with their case. And they ultimately did. Experts will all tell you they're not advocates, they're just experts. They're just going to call it the way they see it. Well, I think that's a nice phrase to use, but the reality is that, and the truth of it is, actually, you do want your experts to be advocates. You don't want to be advocates, one, for the truth, but also for your client. And that only comes from building relationship. That doesn't happen through AI. Can
yeah,
AI enhance your ability to communicate? Can it enhance your ability to find, to locate, and to retain? Absolutely, it can, but it doesn't replace ever the relationship building that's necessary to have to bring a team of people together, to
mm,
really fight for your client.
mm. Taking
Yeah.
that to the extreme, Bill, how do you think you would do in a closing argument in front of a jury, when going against a robot AI?
Yeah. So the Japanese, they have an AI judge.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, and I'm not sure
Wow.
what area it's working in, but I know this through my counterparts in Cambodia. And
Yeah.
if you ask, and I'll circle back. Let me take the long weavy path back to your question. But
Yeah.
um, if you depending on the country and the age group of people you talk to, so for instance, um, here you ask Americans, what do you think about an AI judge? It's a little bit of a split. Some say maybe, some say no. It's kind of a mix. Nobody really. Some will say, I don't know. I never thought about it. Whatever. A little ambivalence here. It's going to change. That's going to change. for a variety of reasons that we won't discuss at this point. But go to Cambodia and you ask law students, young people, what do you think of an AI judge? The Japanese have an AI judge. What do you think about that for Cambodia? Almost uniformly, all in. We want an AI judge. And you think, why would you want to leave decisions, judicial decisions, up to a non human to determine based on some algorithm? And their perspective is, oh, because we think our system here is very corrupt
Oh.
and that we don't believe we get fairness. We don't believe we get justice often with a human judge who may be not on the up and up. And that's a problem. That's a problem in a lot of countries that are third world. It's becoming a problem
Mm,
here where
mm,
you have in America where the judiciary is now under severe attack and being
mm,
questioned at every turn. And
mm,
oftentimes questioned at every turn, not by society, but by us lawyers.
mm.
Okay. So there's a very dangerous road that and I'm off on a little bit. I'm off on a tangent here, but hang in there with me. And so when you talk to these young people, young up and coming lawyers, they say, you know what, I'm probably okay with an algorithm and an AI judge as opposed to a real one because I think the system is rigged. It's not fair. It's corrupt, and I think it would be fairer to go with an AI judge. I think that's horrible. I
I
think it's
agree.
horrible. I think it's horrible. It's because I have a healthy sense of skepticism against AI only to the effect that somebody's going to build that judge and it's going to be a
Yeah.
person. And there are going to be algorithms and there are going to be things put in there that are going to make decisions that might not be the same as decisions that are made by a human brain that is tempered, we hope, that's tempered with not just a desire for justice, but also a desire for mercy,
Mm,
right? Those are
yep.
two critical elements. And I think it's a little hard to say I'm going to take all those things that are so uniquely human and implant that into a machine and say I'm gonna rely on that wholeheartedly. So I'm the reverse of what my counterparts in Cambodia are willing to do. Um, I say all that to say let's take it into the context of in court and you're making an argument, right? And the way I know that I would have to argue whether against an AI machine or argue to a judge who's an AI judge is the only way I know how to do it. And that is I have to break everything down to the bare bones that speak directly from the heart, right?
Mm,
And how effective would that be to an AI jury or an AI judge or fighting against an AI machine? I don't know that it would be effective at all because you're taking an element out of the transition to AI. AI doesn't have a heart and it's never going to have a heart.
mm,
Now, can you build algorithms into these systems? I'm sure you can, but it's not going to be human. And so
mm,
my argument would I would question whether I would have much success at all
mm,
in trying to speak from the heart to a system that doesn't have a heart.
mm.
And if
Well,
it does have got it built in through somebody else. So I don't know. So my question would be the question is, well, how do you think you'd do? I don't know. I think I'd probably do pretty bad.
yeah, well, no, wait, well, hold on though. So the question is, how do you think you'd do if only the defense attorney was a robot AI, but we were still in front of a human
Then I'm
jury.
talking to a jury.
Yeah, human jury. So
Yeah,
still bone and flesh and let's just say the judge is a human judge as well.
I'll take that one. I'm comfortable with that one. Bring it on. Bring
Yeah.
it on. Let's get the avatar in there and they can clinically and reasonably analyze these things with all the best logic in the world. And I'm not going to go after logic. I'm going to go after the heart.
Mm,
I'm going to take the heart. I'm going to temper it with what the law says it is, and I'm going to focus on leading anything I say arguments to a jury with the heart message first, I'll back it up with as much reason as I need, but I'm not going to focus on logic. I'm not going to focus on the rules. In fact, am not a real fan of the rules. I think a lot of people are treated poorly by strict adherence to rules and elevating procedure and rules over the top of people. I think that's the
Mm,
wrong approach. I think people come first. And I think if
mm,
I could talk to a jury, any jury, from the heart, I'll have better than even odds, at least better than even odds
mm,
of going toe to toe with the machine that's going to talk about logic and reason and not have a heart to connect with people on. That's our most
mm,
powerful. Let's get real, right? Our most powerful weapon as trial attorneys is to come and to connect with people. It's what scares. It's what scares corporations and insurance companies and money managers and money changers, if you will. It's what
mm,
scares them to death because when you connect with other human beings, powerful things can happen, powerful change can happen, and division dissipates. And when division dissipates, guess what else goes away? This thing called chaos.
mm,
Chaos is divisive. We see it rampant, and we don't have to look very far in today's daily news, and chaos has erupted everywhere. Lawyers, while we fight in chaos because that's the world, we're in a chaotic, difficult situation, we don't present the spirit of chaos. What we present is the spirit of unity, of healing, of completeness, of wholeness. That's one heart talking to another. And guess what hearts yearn for? They yearn for that. So if you can take your case as a trial lawyer, and you know this is ranch 101 stuff, and be a human being to people and connect on that level, magical things happen, good things happen. Chaos and division are dissipated. They don't ever go away, but at least you can push them back out of the way so that a little bit of justice can be accomplished for a person who needs it. And that's a heart message. It is not a head
mm,
message. And when I say a head
mm,
message, I mean the brain. The problem for us as lawyers, right? We're up here in our brains all the time, cogitating, thinking about rules and analysis, and as we do that, it's almost a converse reaction. As we do that all the time, and we live up in our heads, our hearts start to shrink,
mm,
right? They start to get a little bit
mm,
smaller because we're not thinking enough about other people from right here, and we're not communicating and connecting on a heart level. We're connecting on a head level, and that isn't the way. I've never practiced law that way, and I hope to God I never do practice law that way. I want to practice law from a heart level, reasoned by my brain to that
mm,
extent. And when we do that, we have the opportunity and the skills and all the wonderful things that come with being a trial lawyer to to change outcomes for people that really changes their world in an amazing way. And that's my hope, that what people will do is what they'll take AI and they'll enhance that. They'll enhance their heart message. We all too often we end up with these little, are you probably you don't remember probably the original. Do you remember the original Grinch? The Grinch that stole Christmas?
yeah.
And what did he have? The Grinch had a heart the size of a pea, right?
Mm,
His heart was the size of a pea, and he stole all the gifts and all the Christmas gifts from the little Who's in Whoville because he didn't like him. He had no relationship with them. In fact, he hated them, and he wanted to ruin their Christmas. And then when he
mm,
did, a little Who reached out to him, and all of a sudden he starts having relationship with the Who's in Whoville, the little Who's in Whoville. You got to watch it. And all of a sudden his heart goes from the size of a pea and it explodes like 6, 7 times bigger. And then all of a sudden there's a relationship of love and care and cherishing for one another. And the Grinch, who was once the Grinch, became the dear friend and the person who loved the Who's, and they all lived in harmony together. I know that's idealistic, but what we need to do as lawyers is we all need to have a little Grinch moment where our
mm,
hearts get enlarged about 6 or 7 times bigger than they are, because oftentimes we have the hearts the size of a pea because what we go through is we're fighting chaos on a regular basis, and that's very draining. That's very draining
mm,
to ourselves and to our profession, and it spreads out throughout society. So the one thing I would say to you is have that Grinch moment, have it every day, and let your heart get bigger and bigger. And that will in turn change the way you go about trying cases. It'll change the way you care about your clients and your coworkers. It'll actually, believe it or not, and this is an earth shatterer for me, it'll actually change the way you feel about opposing counsel.
Mm,
Like,
mhm.
especially opposing counsel that in your core, you're like, I don't like them. I don't like the way they treat me, and I don't like the way they treat my client. But it can actually change the way you see them and view the reactions that we often get in a much more positive way that's also life-changing, life-giving to your client, but also life-changing for you as the trial lawyer who's in that arena every day. So
Mm.
there's a long tangent, and I hope I somehow in all of that, Fabian, answered that question.
No, you did. That was spot on, man. Well, yeah, I think, my takeaway from what you said, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't fake, you can't AI kind of that gut feel. I call it that gut feeling, but you're describing it as, coming from the heart, or we can call it intuition. But um, you know, as much as a computer can try, I agree with you. I think we do pretty good in front of a human jury, because I think they can, there's that, you can tell when somebody's BSing you, and or even I'm pretty sure we'll be able to tell when a robot is trying to pull a fast one. Um,
Well, I'll tell you, well, here's what would be really fascinating: trying a case to an all AI jury, a whole
oh,
12 avatars. Okay, okay, that would
yep.
be fascinating. And could we somehow melt the minds of these avatars to actually come alongside us as human beings and go, oh, what's that? I don't know. That's really
Huh.
strange. I think it's a feeling. What's a feeling I'm not supposed to feel? I mean, when AI can get there, and it's probably getting there, and generate feelings in these machines, then I'm a little more bending toward having them in some positions of authority or some decision-making positions. But short of that, if you don't have a heart, I'm pretty cold. I'm pretty strict on this rule. You must have a heart, and it must be a big heart for humanity to be in these positions that all too often in our world today, and certainly around the things that we're seeing around our own nation and around the world, all too often people in positions of authority are heartless, which means they don't. It's not an absence of a heart because they're living, breathing human beings. So we know that a heart has to be there, but heartless means it's less of a heart. And
Mm,
the goal, I think, of any civilized society, in fact, even in any uncivilized society, ought to be to enlarge their hearts toward one another, right? Because when the heart grows cold, right? When the heart grows cold, bad things happen, and
mm,
human beings stop become being seen as human beings, and they get seen as things.
mm,
And things are it's bad to be considered a thing. When
mm,
you're considered a thing, all kinds of atrocities happen. So human
mm,
beings have to have enlarged hearts so that they can actually view other human beings with love and kindness and justice and mercy and accountability and all the things that make us up as humans. And if we would lean into that and lean deep, I mean deeply lean into it as trial lawyers, and we as trial lawyers should be leaders in this.
mm,
We shouldn't be followers. We should be leaders in this kind of thinking. We change not only our days and our clients' lives and our communities. We literally start shaping a movement that changes the world in a powerful,
mm,
good way. And I see way too much drift that's drifting in negative, um, unloving ways. And my
mm.
hope is, as trial lawyers, we'll take up the challenge and lead that way. Although um, we're, as you know from your time at the ranch, we all have big egos, low self-esteem, all suspended over a chasm of insecurity, as Jerry Spence used to tell us. So the challenge is real, but hopefully, and I hope and I think we are up to the challenge as trial lawyers. So we'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and for context, for some of the folks that might not know, the ranch is the Trial Lawyers College that Jerry Spence
Yep.
um, started, and ran, and now it's the Trial Lawyers College or, the Jerry Spence method,
Yes,
both awesome programs, that we would highly recommend. So
good
you've
people,
already you'd
very
all
good
yeah, I
people.
think oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said superb human beings, good people, real
Oh, yeah.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Um, uh, you know, uh, as far as jury trials, you've already spoken to it, eh, I'm just wondering if you have anything to add as far as 12 why let 12 people decide? Why not just an arbitrator? I mean,
yeah.
what's the big deal about a jury trial?
Hardest thing in the world, number one, right? Don't make no mistake about it. Jury trials aren't easy. They're hard. They're hard. And in the divisive world that we live in, my negative self, right? So my negative Bill Pickett self talk says, "Hey, for crying out loud, you can't convince 12 human beings of any single thing in the divisive world that we live in today, right?"
Mm,
That's my negative talk. My more positive side, and this is a constant battle that goes on, is wait a second. Every single one of those 12 people, and then whether it's 100 people or 200 people in voir dire, and you're selecting or deselecting the best of the best to come in, every single one of them, guess what they got? They all got a heart. They all
mm,
bleed red blood. They all have emotions. They all have feelings. There's so much more in common with each other substantively than the divisive things that we see as negatives. And
mm,
so, uh, when I can push back the negative self talk that says, y'all never convince 12 people of the same thing in anything, they can't even agree on what the temperature is today, let alone whether your client's guilty, whether your client's innocent, whether your client deserves compensation, whether your client deserves nothing. They'll never get it right. You got to push those thoughts aside and remember there's way more commonality that people have. They all know love or desire it like crazy. They know betrayal, right? We know we've all had issues in our life, and the ranch is great about mentoring this story. Jerry was very big on the themes of trust and betrayal. Why? Because humans all understand that. Um, we all know sadness. We all
mhm,
know some level of grief. We also know some level of joy. We know happiness. We know all the mixed emotions that come with being a human being that make us all part of that tribe. And that's the focal point going forward into trial. And I have to do a lot of self-talk. Wait a second, Bill. You can find more than 12 people. You'll find 12,000 people or beyond that will have similarities and beliefs that are consistent with finding justice, with seeking to help do something wonderful and great in the world, whether it be for an injured person or a person or a person that is just like them. So I guess I'm more while I have those thoughts of negative division that lurk, right, and they creep around the edges of our conscious thought. We've got to push them back and remember all the reasons why we're close as as a race, as human beings, as a human race on one planet, right? And we need each other. And if you can, we can talk in those. And this isn't trickery. You know
mm,
this. It's not trickery.
mm,
This is truly speaking from down here, deep inside your heart and your soul, which is the other thing. It's probably the greatest thing we all have in common, a soul.
mm, mm,
Okay. And yes, I've met a lot of people that are soulless,
mm,
not an absence of soul, but less of a soul for various wounds and things that have happened to them. But we all have a soul, and that unites us and will forever unite us, provided we don't let this thing called chaos constantly enter into our lives to create this wicked
mm.
thing called division. Because what are we looking for with jurors? Unity.
Yep.
To come alongside and here's us and here's our client and here's the jury and we come together, right? And that that's so human. That's so
Mm.
human. um as long as we can push back chaos, and the division that comes along with that. And if we and you know what? Here's the other thing: as trial lawyers, if we fail, if we fail, and that's where you get the jury verdict, where you're like, okay, it feels like somebody just put a dagger in your heart because they don't agree with you. We mourn, we pick ourselves up, we dust ourselves off, and we get back in the fight again.
Mhm.
It's that simple. Yeah, because you're
Yeah.
not gonna we don't win them all as a trial lawyer, but as long as we lead with principled uh, with a principled ethic and we lead with our hearts, I think we're not going to go wrong. We
Yeah.
that's yeah. So
Yeah, no, and I think even when we lose, there's always healing, whether it's us that need to get healed and, do a
yeah,
better job of picking cases or
yeah,
if it's, or,
yeah,
the defendant, the defense attorney, I think the process is messy, but,
yeah.
yeah, I think,
You
we're pre
you speak like a true trial lawyer there because you gotta get and when I'm a kid when I was a kid we called it a whooping. Right? And you gotta get a whooping, and if you get a whooping, and that's when you find out, I don't think you find out if you're a trial lawyer from big verdicts or big settlements of any kind. I don't think that doesn't test your mettle of whether you're a trial lawyer or not. What tests your mettle of whether you're a true dyed-in-the-wool trial jock that is committed to serving people is when you get knocked down, you've put hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars into a belief that you're going to find justice and you don't.
Mm,
And you get stung hard and you get back up again to fight another day. That's when you know this is what God created you for. It's what you believe in. It's where you ought to be. And it hurts, man.
mm.
Or you could do a whole podcast on losing. And
Oh.
I'd be like your first guy. I've fought more battles and suffered more whoopings than I care to imagine. But the beauty of that is from the whooping, if you can stand up and get back on your feet again, you'll learn so much from it if you're willing to take the pain of it and learn and think it through and then readjust. That's way more than you ever get when you get a big one and you're like, okay, that's great. I'm the greatest trial lawyer in the world, and you're really not. You just won one. You just won one. And be
Yeah.
thankful, and I believe in celebrating those moments. I do, but they will never be moments in the victories that allow you to test your mettle and to know who you really are than in comparison to what happens if you really absorb the losses as painful as that is. And trust me, I have experienced that pain more than once. And I'll tell you, I can tell you this: it has all been worth it. It has all been worth
Mm,
it because of the
mm,
growth that comes from it. So,
mm, mm.
whole nother podcast there, Fabian.
Yeah. Well, let's switch gears a little bit. What comes to mind, when, uh, when politicians talk about the rule of law? W
Oh, yeah, bingo. Okay, so big hot topic, super hot topic. You can't hardly find a newscast, podcast, political speech anywhere on the planet these days where somebody doesn't throw out the phraseology rule of law. Rule of law, rule of law. Well, we follow rule of law. We adhere to rule of law. We believe in rule of law. We rule of law is who we are. Um, so here's my rule of thumb on that. Anytime a politico, okay, and I'm not going to try to be too political, but when I speak about politicians, my phraseology is these are politicos. And politicos aren't just politicians, politicos are also bureaucrats, people that work within governmental systems. So I lump them. I'm lumping them all in here, and I'll try to keep my heart clean here because I could get a little jaded. Okay, because I do a lot of government misconduct stuff over the years. So, but
Yeah.
whenever you hear a politico espousing the phraseology rule of law, immediately skepticism needs to be brought into check, because oftentimes politicos have no idea what rule of law is.
mm,
They have a much better understanding of what a different concept, and a different concept is rule by law. Rule by law is not rule of law. And make no mistake, they are not the same. They're not the same thing. Rule by law is I'm in authority. I'm going to tell you what the law is, and you're going to follow it. Rule of law is actually the full definition, and you have to start with the full definition. It's called the principal rule of law. Okay. Oftentimes the politicals will they don't like the word the principal rule of law. That doesn't make sense to them. But you want to know what the principle is? The principle, and it's not principal. It's not like the leader of a school district, the principal.
yeah,
It's principle. Okay.
yep,
And a principle is a simple truth. It's a truth. Okay. And the one thing that the politicos of the world don't want to think there's anything, they don't want to believe there are simple truths. Here's a simple truth for you. All human beings deserve, by the fact of being human, to be treated with dignity.
yeah,
Did Does anybody disagree? Should anybody disagree with that?
yeah,
No. The reason is that's a truth. It is a fundamental truth. When politicos talk about the principal rule of law, that's not what they mean. They're not talking about truth leading to an agreed set of norms that people assent to, right? People give authority to. So it's a truth that we collectively come alongside and say, here are the ground rules by which we're going to live collectively in our society.
mm,
That's rule. That's a sense of rule of law, the principal rule of law. That is not the rule by law. And you'll look at, I've got a list of probably every world leader that you can think of. And I'm talking from President Trump, President Obama, um, many Xi Jinping, Hun Sen, leaders in Europe, all the way to Hitler. Okay, every one of them uses the phrase "rule of law" in this strange fashion, and they
mm,
claim they are all following rule of law. Well, that just can't be true. That just
mm,
can't be true. They can't all be following rule of law, because some of them have committed some horrible atrocities. Okay,
mm,
um, and so their confusion is rule by law. So when a Politico speaks about that, have a healthy dose of skepticism and then try to analyze it under the true principles of rule of law. And we don't have all the time in the world for me to go into the details of this, but I'm working and writing an article and constantly revising it to try and get a handle on what is the principal rule of law and what does it mean to our society and the world. And it's still in the formation processes, and I've got a draft that I've written, and at some point I'll share it with you when I've got it finalized.
mm,
But that's probably one of the most plaguing things we face right now, is this misunderstanding of what it is. Because I watch people, um, you know, as people are getting being beaten down by authority, and I'm watching people say, that right, that right there is rule of law. We're a rule of law. We're a rule of law country. It's a rule of law nation. And I'm like, well, you're a few degrees off here. There's this thing called rule by law, and then there's this thing called the principal rule of law. And a principal rule of law it's about following rules for sure. It's not about beat downs. It's not about authority abusing power in any way, shape, or form. And to take that principle and to twist it and to contort it, it
mm,
leads me right back to what I always say are the evils that we're fighting against, and that is chaos and division.
mm,
And when you take a beautiful concept like rule of law, the principle rule of law, um, which is, by the way, grounded on transparency and trust and a willingness of people to agree to a set of guidelines and principles by which we live our lives. That requires the consent of the governed, right?
Yep.
Not the dictatorial, the dictatory or the dictations of the leadership. When you take that principle and you contort it into a confused, messy, um, almost just a phraseology that it cheapens it, and it allows in the door of your nation, your communities, your home. It allows in the door the spirit of chaos. And make no mistake, chaos is a spirit. It's a real thing.
Mm,
If you've ever
mm,
experienced it in your life, you know what I mean. It creates division, and it takes a spiraling downward. It doesn't lift people up. So, um, again, it's a topic near and dear to my heart. I'm working on it. I'm actually looking at rule of law, and I'm looking at what happens. This is part of my work in Cambodia. Is what happens when a society falls apart and rule of law collapses. And in the
mm,
70s, that happened in Cambodia with the rise of Pol Pot and the genocide. There was a genocide of, the estimates are 2.5 to 4 million people were genocide in Cambodia during the reign of the Khmer Rouge, which was Pol Pot's regime. And you have the initial collapse of rule of law, chaos ensues, division is there full, and it's full, and it's vibrant in everybody's mind. People become things, they're no longer human, and you see genocide follow. Once that's arrested, at least on a limited basis, once it's arrested and someone tries to stop it, as they did in Cambodia in the 70s, then you follow a period of civil war. So
mm,
there was a 4 year period, 3 to 4 year period of the collapse of rule of law, followed by a 20-year period of constant skirmishing and battles and civil war, followed by a period where people said, enough is enough. Let's try some restoration.
mm,
And one of the things I always point to our Cambodian counterparts and say, hey, everybody here in America, take a look. Take a look at what, there's a great example. We cannot go back to the 1860s. When's the last time you had got to sit down and talk to a Civil War veteran?
mm.
They don't
Nope.
exist anymore.
Nope.
They're gone. So we can't talk to the Civil War from our Civil War period and say, "Hey, what happened? Um, what was it like? What led to that chaos erupting and the division that ripped us apart, and then the chaos that followed for decades after?" We don't have those people, but they do exist in the world. There's a lot of war-torn countries
Mm,
where genocide, chaos has erupted, and civil war has followed for many, many years. And we can talk to them because they're alive, and they're still alive today. And you can talk to those people, and they'll tell you, well, here's how the story goes, and it doesn't end well, and it creates a lot of destruction in its path. And the way we avoid that, that cataclysmic meltdown, is we all learn and understand and have a solid definition of what it means to adhere to the principal rule of law.
mm,
Because the principal rule of law, in my thinking here, it is a pathway from chaos to freedom. The
mm,
principal rule of law, I envision it, it's a pathway, and it will take a peoples from not just a country, but peoples, because countries are people. It'll take a
yep,
peoples from chaos to freedom if
mm,
if we consistently work together toward understanding, defining it very well, and then implementing it, because rule of law does not implement on its own.
mm,
Doesn't implement on its own. It takes real people believing in the concept and the principle, and then letting it play out, and driving to make it work. And that won't happen as long as we have division, chaos, and people proclaiming rule of law under the banner of what's really rule by law.
mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, a lot. Thank you,
Okay.
Bill. When you brought that up, I I have to admit I'm still learning on this. I have to admit my ignorance. But yeah, the way you described it makes helps me see it a little bit better. You know, for me, I think of it as when we're in the jury. You know, 12 everyday people get to apply the law, and that's going to be a completely you know, a lot of times it could be a different way that a jaded judge would apply it, and that's why we you know, we want everyday people that can see
Yeah,
with fresh eyes. But now that you bring it up, I think it's a conversation that we need to bring up a lot in these days, because it's
yeah,
not just in the jury room that's needed. It's the division is getting amplified lately, and we need to have leaders,
yeah.
you know, see that distinction. You know, like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing your article, man.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things I would encourage anybody that tracks, even if track just a smidge of what I'm saying here, the WSBA, the Washington State Bar, has a rule of law ambassador program now, right? And the goal there is you sign up to be an ambassador for rule of law, and who doesn't want to be an ambassador? Number one, right? We all want to be
Yeah.
ambassadors, reaching
Yeah.
out and extending goodwill to fellow human beings. And so I'm a part of that program. And if you're any of you or anybody that's interested in that, connect with WSBA, and they really give you a toolkit to help you understand. And the process is still being worked and shifted, but it's a process to be ambassadors for our community, to go out and explain what is rule of law and why is it so important to the fundamental fabric of our nation, and why are lawyers especially adapt at actually talking about the subject, right? It's because we study the law and we're very passionate about it. That's one thing. But the one thing beyond that, what I think we all need to realize is there's only about it's 1.2, 1.3 million lawyers in America. Okay. That these are ABA numbers. There's 350 plus million citizens in this country. Okay.
Yep.
All right. 1.3 million, 350 plus million. Who needs to buy into rule of law wholeheartedly? The 1 million or the 350 million?
The 350.
Arguably, it's the citizens, right? It's the non-lawyers that have to buy into and understand rule of law. Our role as attorneys can be really special in this area, this idea of being a rule of law ambassador or an ambassador for rule of law, is that we do have positions where if we can connect with the 350 million, one lawyer at a time, in a heartfelt, honest, real way, we can help our our brothers and sisters understand how significantly important a true understanding of rule of law is, and we can better our society. So I think it's how we work in unison, but it's not going to work. It's never going to happen if all 1.3 million licensed legal professionals in the country believe in rule of law to our core. Uh, we're not the solution. We're part of the answer, but the real answer and the real solution is getting 350 million Americans to understand the concept and how powerful it is, and the blessing that it gives us as a nation and individually in our own lives. So right now we got a lot of people, a lot of that 350 million. They also have the confused idea that rule of law, the principal rule of law, is simply rule by law. It's whatever leadership says it is, and there's no discussion. We're done. That's contorted and not healthy for us.
Mm.
So,
And is that program bill that you described, is it attorneys doing like a know your rights kind of thing,
yeah,
or
yeah, and you got to be really careful. Here's anything the bar does. It doesn't mean that's not just WSBA, but the Arizona State Bar, the Alaska State Bar, or all the bars. Anything we do, we really need to see it as an opportunity to collaborate with our communities. Super, super important. Um, because as lawyers, and you've witnessed this firsthand, right? You've witnessed this firsthand in our podcasts here. Uh, I like to do a lot of talking.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good thing.
And you gotta when you talk to community members, you really need to make sure it's a collaborative effort, and we got to do a lot of listening, especially when we're trying to talk about uh, what are sometimes complex principles, this phraseology, rule of law. What does that mean? What does that mean for the person who is out there and they don't work in the law and they don't work in a law related field? And why does that matter to them? And being able to have a collaborative discussion that they walk away and go, huh, I never really thought about it this way. And this thing called rule of law really does matter. And if I want to have the best life possible, and my wife and my children and my family and my friends and my community and my country full of people to have the best life we can have, I think rule of law is a concept that we need to really look at and have some consensus on what it is so that we can then get behind it and support it in true fashion, not just in some politico's speech, but in real shoe leather lived out every day. And as lawyers, I think if we don't poison the well, we are especially positioned to have that collaborative discussion if we do it and we do it right.
Mm,
That's yet to be seen. Right now, I think the mainstream is dominated by the phraseology that is simply used to connect a phrase to sometimes really bad action that has nothing to do with rule of law and a lot to do with somebody's belief that the law is what I say it is,
mm,
and
mm,
that's ruled by law, and that's
mm,
not a good. So
no. And so is that program it yeah, I'm trying to, wrap my head around,
yeah,
is it gonna, go to the schools, to, like, try to get talk to,
yeah,
kinda engage kids or college
yeah.
students?
So I used the first launch was I spoke as a rule of law ambassador to our local bar association.
Oh,
Um, I didn't see you there. That's
sorry,
okay.
was
I
that
gave you a
recently?
demerit. Fabian wasn't there. Oh, demerit, no. But that was well received, and I'm working on doing an engagement with our Chamber of Commerce.
Mm,
I'm going to try to do some guest lecture spots at the local community college to young folks who are interested in the law and just interested in life. Period. And speaking at schools, high schools, that's a great place. Anything where you can go, you get the training through the bar, you then do your own soul searching on what this concept is and how significant it is. You pump all that into your head and your heart, and then you go out into the community and you speak and you enter into hopefully collaborative discussions where when you're done, my goal when I have a discussion about rule of law isn't to dictate to somebody what I think it ought to be or is. My goal is at this stage of the game to get people thinking about it. So when they hear the phraseology, they have a healthy dose of skepticism that says, okay, well, is that really rule of law? Or is that just politico speech that's coming in and sort of sideswiping a beautiful concept that's well designed and intended to lift people up, but it's now being contorted in a way that pushes people down. Okay.
mm, mm,
And rule of law, it's about accountability, make no mistake. It's about people holding people accountable. It's the when we have our jury hold a defendant accountable for the harm that they caused to one of our clients, that is about accountability. That is also adherence to rule of law, but it's also tempered with justice and mercy, and
mm,
empathy for people and humanity, and about lifting people up, not pressing them down. And there's sort of probably the easiest distinction. If is what just happened about, is it about oppressing people down? I'm not quite sure that's going to be considered rule of law. Is it about ultimately lifting people up and having accountability? That's a lot closer. That's a
mm,
lot closer. Um,
mm,
here's the big red flag to see too. Rule of law should not divide.
Mm,
Rule of law should not bring chaos. If you see chaos and division, something is amiss with this principle rule of law. And I don't have the fix for it all yet, but I think that we know that rule of law is not prospering when we see chaos and division. It just isn't,
mm,
because rule of law is a pathway toward freedom, and it pushes back. It's like the story of the little boy that stuck his finger in the dike to hold the dam from collapsing. And
mm,
that's probably a kid story from my era, so you probably wouldn't know it. But the story of the little boy, he puts his finger in the dike because there's a leak in the dike, and if he doesn't plug the whole thing's going to collapse, and the town's going to flood, and there's going to be chaos, and people are going to be injured and drowned, and all kinds of disaster. So that little boy, one little boy, puts his finger in the dike and holds back the chaos. Rule of law, all of us adhering to the principle rule of law is us putting our finger in the dike to make sure that it doesn't ultimately collapse and enter into this absolute chaos, which oftentimes in the global scale of things ends up in this bizarre scenario where people turn into things, hearts grow cold, and genocide follows.
mm. Jeez.
And we have history of that. We know this is
Yeah.
the way this happens. So the antidote, the finger in the dike, if you will, is rule of law and adherence. And adherence, this is a lawyer phrase, I don't even like it, and adherence thereto. And adherence
Mm,
thereto. That is a belief and a support that I'm going to figure out what this thing is and why it's so important. And then I'm going to support it with my whole heart, and rule of law ambassadors, if you will, um, through the WSBA program, which is a great program. It's about doing that. It really is. And I hope more people take that and they go, "Hey, gosh, I'm going to investigate this because I think I'd be a good ambassador too." And
mm.
then go be one, and go be one.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Well, thank you for bringing it up. I did not know that was a
Yeah,
thing. Um,
yeah,
and I have a couple more questions for you, but before I let you go, I do want to say thank you for your service. For some of the listeners may not know, you served as our WSBA president here in Washington, and that is no light feat. That takes a lot of time and a lot of work. So thank you. That was
is that thank you. No, you're honored to do it. Honored to do it, and I'll tell you, life changing and a wonderful experience. And anybody, is anybody out there, if you really wanted to step into up to, I was going to say up to your neck here in bar leadership, it's really kind of like this, right? You kind of just barely breathing some days. Um, it's a wonderful bar leadership is wonderful. It's a lot of work, but it's such a great way to serve. And
Yeah.
if you get high off and an adrenaline kick off of serving people, and that's your focus, jump in, man, wholeheartedly. I would encourage anybody to do it because it's anytime you can serve in our profession to help lawyers help people. That's a good thing. I had lots of challenges during my time with in my bar service, um, but none of them insurmountable. All of them life changing and shaping, and ultimately really good experiences and great relationships from that season of service. Um,
Yeah.
and you continue to do it. You just roll to the next thing. So
Yep,
yeah,
yep. One of the things I benefited from directly, was from Fastcase. That was such a
yeah,
big step up from our prior free, legal search engine.
yeah,
It got to the point where it was so good that I was able to, let go of my Westlaw subscription, and, so,
yeah.
as a solo attorney, that's a huge help. I mean, I think,
So
yeah, yeah,
yeah. So during my tenure at the bar association, we had Casemaker and
yeah,
Fastcase.
yeah,
And sort of dueling competitors. Well, Fastcase ended up buying. We actually went with Fastcase. I thought it was a superior product. Fastcase ended up buying Casemaker, merging them together, and then they've merged multiple times, like you say, VLEX, and then on to Clio. But that's a great benefit that we try to provide. Where we worked really hard to try to provide that benefit to our membership, and I think it's one of the things we did that makes us better at our profession. So that was wonderful stuff to be a part of.
yeah, yeah. Well, with all this stuff you have going on, Bill, how do you do it? Do you have a what kind of routines, habits um, do you do you live by and recommend?
Yeah. So I'm the guy that one, I don't try to get I don't really let my head hit the pillow or get my feet hit the floor in the morning or my head hit the pillow at night without first of all praying. I'm a
Mm,
believer in prayer. I know other folks say, "Oh, I'm not a prayer, I'm a meditator." Whatever your flavor is.
mm,
I'm a praying guy. And I don't do much in my day without saying, "Okay, God, here I am. It's me again. It's me again. I need some courage. I need some fearlessness. I need some support, need some guidance, and more than anything, I need some wisdom." And I rely on that. I absolutely rely on it. And I believe the God of the universe, if we ask it, he'll deliver.
mhm,
The God of the universe will deliver. So that's how I start. Um, I also am a believer that I take to heart what the flight attendants tell me when I get on an airplane, and they say, "Look, if we're going down and you see that oxygen mask drop out of the ceiling, put your oxygen mask on first, and then
mm,
help those around you." And so I'm a real believer in, as lawyers, we got to remember that simple concept. Put your oxygen mask on first, not to be selfish, but to make sure you can keep breathing to help others. Because if you haven't helped yourself, um, to be steady and to be emotionally, physically, and spiritually well, any one of those three things that is lacking in our life can translate into harms to the people we're trying to help,
mm,
and ultimately can take us down, right? So, um, a guy that needs to spend more time practicing what I'm preaching here. Um, so I tell you, I've got to go now. I've neglected myself physically, right? So I've got to go and get a back surgery.
mm,
And it's coming up. Well, how much help am I going to be to all my clients when I'm knocked out because I've had to have a back surgery and it's an old injury that I really didn't take very good care of? Not much, not much. So I'm gonna have to go put my oxygen masks on here first, get myself healed up so that I can step back into the arena. And we constantly need to be thinking about that. And it's not, again, from a selfish perspective. It's from, how do I make sure I'm sound? And it's meta, it's your physical, mental, and spiritual well-being is critical. One of the things that my good friend Fabian Valencia showed me just recently at a retreat was this breathing exercise. Okay. Well, you know what I incorporated into my walk now? I do the breathing exercise.
mm,
The reason I do that is because I found out I should have known all this from 30 years plus years ago when I was a deep sea diver. I should have known, Bill,
mm.
air is a good thing. A- Air is a good thing. It's a wonderful thing. The body loves it. The world loves it. But I was, like I said, a slow learner. So just a few weeks ago, as you know, as we sat over in Burley Lagoon at Eric's retreat, um,
Yep.
which was wonderful, by the way. There's a whole, I'm sure you already done that podcast. Anyway, you showed me and reminded me more than anything the importance of breathing. And so that's another way that I try to take care of myself. So it's prayer, physical activity, proper medicine, right? I'm working on the diet thing. I struggle with that, but also just get up and breathe, man, and also try to de-stress, because what we do when you come in to help a person who's struggling with chaos and their life has been torn upside down, inside out and upside down, you have a lot of that secondary trauma,
Mm,
and we live and breathe that all the time. So
yep.
that's so critical that you do some self-care, and you do it regularly. And when you fall off the horse, get back up again, right? You fall off the horse, get back up on it again. When I was a kid, I used to ride as a kid. And before I ever
Mm,
went to the ranch, remember at the ranch show, it's about working the horse?
yep.
Work the horse. It's phraseology. Okay. It resonated really well with me because when I was a little kid, my grandfather would always let me ride. He'd have
Mm,
different ponies and I'd get to ride. And forever falling off and crying and kicking in the dirt. But my grandfather, he told me, he said, Bill, and he actually called me, he didn't call me Bill, he called me gentleman. He said, gentlemen, I'd be boohooing and crying because I fell off the horse and I wasn't ever going to ride again. He said, you get yourself up and you get back on that horse again, or you're never going to ride. And I was like, never going to ride. Bam, man, I was on that horse again. That's
mm,
something we always have to do as trial lawyers, is get ourselves up and back on the horse again. And that requires take care of ourselves physically, spiritually. We're all spiritual creatures.
mm,
I'm the craziest I'm not promoting, I'm just telling you I'm the crazy Jesus guy. That's me. And a lawyer told me one time, I said to him, I said, "Hey, you're a Christian? I didn't know you were a Christian." He goes, I'm a Christian. I'm just not a very good one." This is this is one of my dear trial lawyer friends. I'm like, "Oh, that's me. I'm a Christian too. I'm just not always a very good one, but I am." And so there's my faith. So faith is important. Spirituality and connectedness to higher power is so significant. Um, and caretaking your soul. And the other thing is emotionally. I'm a real believer. I think Rick Friedman mentioned this. At one of his seminars that, oh, you're a trial lawyer. Well, you all need therapy.
mm,
You all need form of therapy because you're a trial lawyer. And I was like, well, darn, he's right. We
yeah,
we all need, so you constantly, you need to be, if you need therapy, you get the therapy you need. If you need to eat better, eat better. You need to exercise. You need to pray. Do the things that fuel yourself as a human being, so that you can keep going. I'm 62 this season, and I'm running up close to, I started late in life, so I'm only in 29. I'm coming up on 30 seasons of working in the law, right? Um,
mhm,
Man, I get up every day and I pinch myself because I'm a lawyer. I'm like, how did that happen? You're so blessed to be this, to get to do these
mm,
things and to come alongside people. And I'm like, okay, God, will you give me another 30 seasons doing this? Just let me keep doing it, man. I mean, or reincarnate me back to being a 1L again. I'll do that too because that's so exciting, right? So I'm
yeah,
saying you find ways to reinvent yourself, and reinvigorate yourself to stay fresh. And you do that oftentimes by doing what we did over at Eric's place in Burley Lagoon,
mm,
taking a moment to take a breath. When my friend Favian said, "Everybody, do what I do here. Here's an example." And then Fabian says, "Couple more sips." Okay, slowly let it out. I'm like, wow. So there's a blessing. I'm sharing that. Yes, a blessing you gave to me, and it's one of the things I would encourage people to do to reinvigorate themselves, to also recreate themselves and reinfuse themselves with passion that's necessary to live life and to live it to the fullest. I mean,
mm,
the scriptures that I adhere to tell me that we are to live life in the abundant, not
mm,
we're supposed to live life and be miserable the whole time.
mm, mm,
That's not what life is about. It's not what God says to us. God says you are to live life and to live it in the abundant. So you can have you God came to give us life in the abundant, period, end of story. And if you don't believe in, you don't have to believe what I believe. We all got free will. But man, find what it is. Find what it is that allows you to live life in the abundant. And it's going to be necessary to get there, to get there, to put your oxygen mask on first. And remember that, because if you don't, you ain't helping. You're not going to help anybody.
mm,
My wife reminds me of that on a regular basis.
mm,
You just you gotta take better care of yourself, Bill, because if you don't, you can't help anybody. And like I said, I'm in a little depression right now. I'm not doing my work over in Cambodia right now. Because why? Because I've got a health issue with the low back, and I got to get that all fixed, and I got to fight through that. But I'm gonna. But
mm.
It happens to all of us, but there's
Yeah.
my little tip for what that is. Yeah,
Got it, got it. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, and wishing you the best with the surgery, man. I know you'll come through it and get better. Um,
right on,
uh,
right on.
c Couple more quick fire ones. The
Yeah.
best, gadget, or physical purchase or subscription under $1,000 that
Hmm.
has changed, your life for the better, not just with work, but even just life in the last 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you what first thing I'm gonna tell you what it's not. It's not a cell phone.
Huh. Yeah, that
That that has caused all kinds of stress and chaos. While it's a necessary now it's a necessary evil in what we do, but it's definitely, not. Sometimes I'd rather go back to an ink container and a quill, and
Ooh.
scribble out some letters as opposed to doing texting and all the craziness that we do. I'll tell you what I think's made my life better and always has made my life better without beyond a shadow of a doubt, and that is anytime I buy a plane ticket, whether
Hmm,
it's $1,000 or more, to go to some beautiful piece of tropical paradise
hmm,
where I can step off an airplane once it lands on the tarmac on a beautiful, tropical, remote part of this world
hmm,
where life as I'm walking down the gangplank off of the plane and I feel the humidity start to press in on me and to start to take away the pain in my and the creaks in my joints and I feel 10 years of age fall off of me and I
hmm,
find a place that's peaceful and tranquil and it costs me $1,000 or less to get there. That's the best use of money that I've ever had because I can go to a quiet place, and I need this on a regular basis where I go to get away, to unplug from the craziness of the world
hmm,
and become human,
hmm,
more human. And that takes space and it takes some peacefulness. And there are places in this world still that exist. We got to work hard to find them because they're not promoting themselves as the go-to place. And I got a few of them. I got a few of them that are my go-to places where um, I can spend a little bit of money to get there, $1,000 or less. Sometimes it takes more, but $1,000 or less is pretty typical. And I can be regenerated by simply stepping off an airplane into that peace, that place of peacefulness, and changing. You changes your view, even temporarily. A change in your view can change your perspective. Okay?
hmm,
Change your geography, change your view, change your perspective. And we
yeah,
all have that ability in this modernized world that we live in. Spend a few dollars, they're well spent to come out of the hard work that we're doing on occasion and go to that place that's peaceful and restore it restorative. And I would encourage
hmm,
everybody to do that to the extent that they're able to. We can't do it all the time. Um, but that's a lesson, another lesson I learned, a lesson I could probably write a book called Lessons from the Back Deck. Okay.
hmm,
Because when I worked up north, it was always everything was I say I'm a lawyer. I'm 29, 30 seasons a lawyer. Everything was a season. Everything was based on seasons, right? You fished a certain season, you logged in a season. Your commercial diving activity was all seasonal. And so I live in seasons and our life is very seasonal as human beings. And there always needs to be a season of work. There's a season of happiness, a season of sadness. There's a season of stress. There's a season of joy and renewing of the spirit and the mind. And that for me always takes, I have to get on an airplane and got to
hmm,
travel a little distance down to one of these places that speaks serenity and peacefulness to me. For some
hmm.
people, it's easier. Some people probably just go in their backyard and they got it. That's probably
Yep.
cheaper. But
Yeah.
I gotta go a few thousand miles away, and I try to decompress a little bit when I can get away, and I do it. So that's
Nice,
a tip.
nice.
Yeah.
I like it. And what's your favorite spot lately?
Oh, if I told you, you could, yeah, I'd have to. you know.
Yeah, you don't yeah, we don't want everyone to flock down there next time.
Yeah, well,
Next time.
so I'll just say I can say geographically, any place in the deep South Pacific is near and dear to my heart,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So I love Hawaii, but that's not deep enough into the South Pacific. But if you want to
Hmm,
get away from the world and you want to meet the most beautiful, friendly people um, on the planet, you go down to the deep South Pacific, and there's so many islands. There's literally thousands of islands down there that will will allow you to decompress and reconnect with yourself, and which is a
hmm,
good thing.
hmm,
But literally, the whole South Pacific is littered, just
hmm,
littered with beautiful tropical oases that are wonderful places to visit and to renew and to restore. And you make a lot of good friends and meet a lot of really fine people that live a
hmm,
different life than we do here.
hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and Bill, your top
Offline, I'll give you the secret spot offline.
alright, deal. Deal. Your top 3, books lately, either books, documentaries, or movies?
Yeah. Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. Okay.
Hmm, okay.
He's
Uh,
so Voss is a former hostage negotiator
hmm,
for I think FBI hostage negotiator, international hostage negotiator. And you know how lawyers we're very keen on we'll get close to negotiations and we'll always go, well, let's just split the difference.
yep,
We meet in the middle, right?
yeah,
And he said, that's he said that's horrible negotiation. That's horrible. He goes because if you think about it from a hostage negotiator's perspective, I've got 10 hostages and I can get 5 of them released and then you go, well, let's just split the difference. You kill two and give me two more, and we'll just split the difference. He goes, you could never do that because that's absurd negotiation practice. So one of the things I've learned from his book is, and um, well, I don't care. I was going to say I've got all these, there's all these little plaintiffs things that we think that we keep secret, our ranch stuff, right? But that's okay. I can say this
yeah,
is if in litigation, I think we really do, to some degree, need to view opposition forces as terrorists.
hmm,
Okay, why? Why do I say that? Because they hold cards, they hold power, they hold authority, and they essentially hold hostage resources that our clients desperately need.
mhm,
Okay, so in a
yeah,
sense, when I say the word terrorist, that they are kind of trained terrorists and they like to toy with things and they know that ultimately they hold a resource that we desperately want to recover for our clients. So he has a whole lot of tactics and approaches to think through when you are negotiating with terrorists that are very applicable, I believe, very applicable to litigation.
hmm,
So that's one. That's one book that I think is great. The other one that I'm reading, and I probably put a lot into. So Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. That's the top. That's a great one. The
yeah,
other one is Killing Chaos. Okay, and if you are into faith, faith and religion and spirituality, and you want to know all the antidotes to how does one stop and combat the divisive chaos that swirls in the world. This is a great book,
hmm,
Killing Chaos. And I don't have the author. I apologize off the top of my head. Um,
sure,
and then the last one, I've read a ton of really superb ones. I'm trying to think of the name. It's oh, it'll come to me. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. I don't remember it off the top of my head. It was so good I
alright,
can't remember it.
alright.
But
It's alright.
Blink, that's what it is. It's
Oh,
Blink.
okay,
Okay,
got
Blink. And the author is a famous author that I don't remember the name of the author, but I remember Blink. And the premise of the book is how oftentimes, and this is really about intuition. And at the ranch, we would call it telly. It would be the
yeah,
telepathy, right, between human
yeah,
beings. And oftentimes, in a brief instant or a blink, you will get a truth will resonate about something or some person and you are spot on 100% accurate. You don't know why, and it's a blink. And while you can be wrong, you can be as a human being in your blink moment with very little information, but you know what you know. It just happens like that. And trial lawyers understand this concept. You know, you could be wrong, but what happens is much of the time we're spot on.
Mm,
And we don't want to admit that because we think, oh gosh, if I were to say I met this person and man, I had them wired so in an instant and it ended up being true. That's exactly who they were. We're afraid to say that because culturally we're taught you shouldn't prejudge.
mm,
You don't have all the facts. And legally, as lawyers, we're trained gather the fact finding mission,
mm,
engage in years worth of endless discovery that cost millions of dollars and cross every T and dot every I because you're a lawyer and that's the way lawyers deal with things. When oftentimes your blink, that moment when you don't have all the information, but it's sometimes so spot on. So that the beauty is trying to figure out when is your blink spot on and when is it freaking way off base. That's sort
mm.
of the challenge. So Blink is another one that it's an older book but I really appreciate it. And then the other one that I like is a pile. Oh, Manny, it's called Crushing Chaos. It's Manny
Got it.
Arango. Okay, great book,
Got it.
love it. Um, Also, is another great book. I'm studying Tongan, right?
Mm,
Alo lelei haku kamea fepehake koi kofi i mau alo ki kolo. Kofi i malo alo ki kolo. Okay, it's a little bit of Tongan,
I
right?
got it.
I
Wow.
don't know
Okay.
what I don't even know what I said, but I'm studying that. That's a great book if you want to learn another language.
Heck
Um,
yeah.
Here's there you go. I really did read these books. That's Never Split the Difference. This is Voss's
Got,
book.
got
Great
it. Got
book.
it.
Great book for trial lawyers that really want to analyze what we do in terms of negotiating with terrorists. Okay.
Mm, got it.
A little bit of funny book. Here's one of my faves, and I go to this book a lot when I'm thinking about damages and I'm presenting injury claims. Mo Levine. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. It's structure and function in advocacy. Mo, as you know, Mo Levine was one of the most famous trial lawyers in the history of the human race. Um,
Yep.
and this book was published in 1968.
Wow.
And I love this book because Mo's actually signed it.
Wow.
Um,
Huh.
and He's long since passed away. But
Yeah.
it talks a lot about how we as trial lawyers need to understand how the body is structured and functions, not to the degree as being that we're doctors, but how it's structured and functions so that we can really truly explain to jurors what our clients are going through. And if we don't have that knowledge and we're not capable of explaining that to jurors, then we're in the wrong profession as trial lawyers for the injured. So love
Yep.
that book. If you can get a copy or if you need to borrow it, it's a great book to parse through.
Mm.
Last thing I'll share with you, because you asked me about books. You probably shouldn't have asked me about books. Uh, and this was on my reading list. Um, it's Trauma Stewardship.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
It's an everyday guide to caring for self while caring for others. I
Mm.
don't know enough about the book, but the title was recommended to me as a good book for people like us who have to put our masks on first because if we don't, we can't care for others. I haven't even cracked it, but it's on my. I always have like 5 or 6 books that are on the list that I'm trying to work my way through. I don't know. You probably deal with the same thing,
Yep.
trying to find the
Yeah.
time. I'm a really slow reader, and especially if I don't like a book, I
Mm.
usually don't throw it away. I fight through it, but I fight through it at a snail's pace, which then slows my reading down. So
Mm.
there you go. There's my book, Bill Pickett's book list. And I didn't know you were going to ask
Nice.
me that question. So I'm glad I had these books ready for you.
Yeah, you have proof. You have proof that you actually still read the paper copies, man. I know a lot of us are switching to the audiobooks or the the digital ones. Well, last word, last thoughts you want to leave, Bill, with anyone that's either thinking about running their own law firm or starting up their own law firm, or are in the middle of it.
Yeah. So one, if you're thinking about doing it, if you're in the middle of it, if you're doing it, uh, give a lot of thought. I did not do this. This is one of the things I did not when I decided I'm leaving my firm and I'm leaving the salary that I was getting as a partner behind. And I had this brilliant, what I thought was a brilliant idea that I would go to my garage and I would put up two walls in the corner of my garage and I would start my law firm there. Um, you need to think about how well resourced are you. Okay, that's
Mhm.
very practical thinking. I
Ooh.
was not resourced. I was not resourced at all. Okay. And in fact, I remember, I think I was at maybe I might have made it 6, 8 months, maybe 6, 8 months after leaving my firm with this brilliant idea to go to my garage and to build a kingdom there. And um, I think I had looked and I had, at what I had, it was about the middle of the month and I had $15,000 or so in expert witness bills coming in. I had to make my own overhead for my family to live, my wife, 3 children. Um, and it's middle of the month, and I looked and I had $34. I will never forget this. I had $34 in my bank account. And I was
Ah,
like, I'm a little under resourced here.
yeah.
I'm a little under resourced because if I can't pay my mortgage and the grocery bill and all the other things that a family needs and pay my expert witnesses in the next 2 weeks here, boy, I'm gonna be a hurting unit. And
Yeah.
$34 doesn't cut it. And so that was sort of my low point. And it was really came from, and the moral is, the good news is, by the grace of God Almighty, I settled a few cases, made some money, got my experts paid my own bills, got clients taken care of, and the rest is history. Continued Was allowed to
Yeah.
continue to move forward. But at one, there have been those moments along the way where you're ass over tea kettle. You think, well, I'm about to get wiped out. This is what we do as plaintiffs lawyers. Sorry, it's part of the game. So the number one thing I would tell people, especially if you're looking at going into the plaintiffs world, look at your resources. And it's not just the monetary resources. Those are incredibly valuable because you're going to spend a lot of resources to try to obtain justice for your clients. That's the way it works. They don't have the money to fund it. So you're doing this. That's the first thing, resources. Where are they coming from? How are you going to make this happen? Also, resources in your own self. Do you have the wherewithal to go it alone, to be at certain on certain days, to be the loneliest planet, or excuse me, the loneliest human on the planet? Do you have that ability? If you don't, rethink the strategy. Um, and do you have access to a really steady support system around you? If
Mhm.
you're thinking about it, or you're in the middle of it, of solo practice, resources, um, the ability to have a community around you that will support you, and do you have it in you? All of those, and probably all, it's a trilogy. All three of them are really critically important to navigate solo practice, especially. And I'm pretty narrow, right? I'm talking about all this obviously from a contingent fee lawyer's perspective in the injury arena, where things can be extremely good or extremely difficult depending on which morning you wake up on at any given
Mm.
time. So the three things that I would encourage people to look at, and to be honest with yourself about it. I mean, quite frankly, when I had $34 in my bank account and nothing but a bunch of bills, maybe the smarter move would have been to go find a firm and go back to a law firm and work there. I don't know that that would necessarily have been the wrong move. I wasn't probably smart enough to do that, but those are options that people have to be honest and look at. And also, the people that are your support network. You can't. It's just like in the political realm. You can't fatigue your donors.
Mm.
Okay. you got to be careful as a solo practitioner that you don't fatigue everybody around you because you're a solo practitioner that needs so much. Because pretty soon you'll truly be solo, whether it be wife, family, or children, or friends. They'll like, oh, here comes Bill. That guy is he just needs so much. I'm running the other direction. So you got to remember that too. It's pretty darn important. Anyway, those are a couple of thoughts on that front. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. This was fun, man. I really enjoyed it. We'll might have to have a round two once you publish your book and or the
Hey,
articles and stuff.
right on. It's good chatting with you, man. Have a great rest of your day, and love you. Keep doing good work, man. Stay a fighter, stay the course, and we'll chat again.
Thank you, Bill. Love you too.
All right.